Alright, Shalom Hebrews. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Alright, Israelites. Man, I'm gonna do this again, man, because it's for some reason, man, Israelites, man, they just lack knowledge. They don't research, and they accept anything that comes from other people, and they easily misdirect it, and then a lot of them just want to sound smart, like they know something, but they really don't. They don't take time to research simple things. You got a lot of Israelites that say, we're from the Americas, in North America, men is our home, and we been here, and all that old crazy stuff, and then they try to use the Tanakh as their history and the foundation of their history to show that they Israelites. But they be so far from the truth, man. They don't have no truth. And then using the Tanakh and then trying to say that you was in the Americas, man, is kind of crazy. It's backwards. And a lot of Israelites, man, they want to know the truth, but they don't take the time out to do simple research. And then they want to align themselves up with anybody or any ethnic group that our oppressors or people that's been over us been against. No matter who they is, they try to line themselves up with them and try to say, oh, we one and the same, because that they done, the other ethnic groups done suffered some hardships, like the Native Americans who held our ancestors as slaves for a long time and didn't want to turn them loose. But you have Israelites and say, oh, we them and they the tribes of Israel. You got them camps. Man, they push that doctrine, and then they push the Hispanic community as being Israelites. Anybody that done suffered around the world by the so-called Europeans, man, the Israelites will say, well, they us and we them, and they don't know real history. That's like, the Native Americans didn't have golden calf or cow worship. They didn't have golden calf worship. You can't find a golden calf nowhere in Native American history where they worship golden calves. It's nowhere. They had bisons. They had bisons that people mistake for buffaloes. You know what I'm saying? Man, they had bisons just because the Sibhardis or the Edomites or the Amorites that came from Spain, that was kicked out of Spain, came over to the Americas because the Amorites did trade, in America, and because that they mistaken the bison for a buffalo, they called them buffaloes, and that's been the name of the bisons. The bisons. And Israelites, man, for some reason, man, but because they run across Seb Hardy history, who was in the Americas, the Israelites say, oh, that's us. And we was in the Americas. But if they look at Tanakh, man, you can't find no supportive of the way that the natives worship. The natives worship Man, they worship coyotes. Man, they worship coyotes. Man, they worship eagles. Man, they worship coyotes. Man, they worship eagles. They worship fox. Man, they worship the albino basin. Man, they had snake worship. Man, they worship snakes. Man, all of them just about worship snakes. Man, they worship albino antelopes or owls. Many worship beavers and otters. Many worship bears. Many worship the jaguar. Many worship all those type of animals. But they didn't have golden calf they didn't have golden calf technology to smelt gold, because they didn't have a golden calf. But for some reason, Israelites think that the natives were Israelites, and that for some reason, men that they left the promised land, that they left the promised land, that the Jews been fighting the Edomites over. Man, they say they left the promised land, man, and then they went to Assyria, ancient Assyria, that was over here. In some kind of way, they made it all the way to the Americas with no Israelite men traditions, no Israelite men traditions or history or heritage of the things or the culture that we Israelites did in the Tanakh. We had houses, man, we had windows, rooms, houses, man, we had carts with axles and wheels and so forth. And none of that stuff you can't find in the Americas. You know, in the Americas, man, they had bear worship. Man, they had all that old stuff, man, that the Israelites didn't do. You know, I prove over and over that the Israelites broke covenant and ran deeper into Africa. But we know that the promised land is northeast Africa and that it's on the African plateau and it will be part of the African continent, you know, and that our ancestors ran into Africa where we got the stones from. You know, none of them stones, all them stones, man, that was in the breastplate that the priest had, Aaron had, that Prophet Moses and them put together when they come out of ancient Egypt, man, them stones are not found in America. How would they get the stones, man, that's only found in Africa here in the Americas if the Israelites were from America? Make it make sense, man. I get tired of these Israelites, man. I get tired of these Israelites. Man, they be stealing other ethnic groups' culture and stealing their history and then try to say that it's Israelite history. Man, let's go to this for a second. Man, just for a second. Let's read out the Tanakh. When we come out of Egypt and Prophet Moses took off, man, to get the covenant, that when Prophet Moses, man, took off to get the covenant, that Aaron, his brother, did this. Look, man, this is after Tanakh. This is after Tanakh, man. This is our history. This is not Native American history. This is not Hispanic folks' history who are natives that was mixed with the conquistadors and so forth, produced a whole Hispanic race in the Americas. Look here. When the people saw that Moses, this is Exodus 32, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, "Come and make us a god who shall go before us. For that man Moses who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." And Aaron said to them, take off the gold earrings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. This he took from them and cast it in a mold and made it into a molten calf. Into a molten calf. Yeah, you see right there? Now, where is it in Native American history, anywhere in the Americas, that they took gold and molded into a golden calf? They didn't have domesticated cows. They didn't even have domesticated bisons. They didn't have domesticated bisons. Nowhere. And that they followed the bisons. Wherever they went. You know, wherever the bisons went, they was right behind them, and then they'll drive them off a cliff. And then when they fall to their death, or that they'll catch them, because they didn't even have horses. man, until the Spaniards come over. They didn't even have no horses till the Spaniards come over. But in the Tanakh, you read that the Israelites dealt with horses, man, and all kind of stuff. When the king of Assyria, man, invaded the land and whooped the people and took some to Assyria, he made a joke with King Hezekiah that if you could put, 500 men on these horses that I'm going to give you, that then you're doing good. And man, there wasn't no horses in the Americas. It wasn't no golden calf. So whenever Israelite come to you, talking about we was in the Americas, we been in the Americas, then you cannot claim Tanakh history as being yours. You cannot claim really being the Israelite, because the Israelites didn't reach the shores of America until we was captured in Africa and brung to the strange land. We didn't do no serpent worship. We worshiped the golden calf. And then you can see that again, man, about 400 years from Exodus is when Jeroboam, who was from the tribe of Ephraim, and his descendants or his kindreds were from Egypt, because Joseph had Asenath, the priest of On's daughter, who worshipped golden calves, that when he ran into Egypt during Solomon's time and came out after Solomon's death, that he brung golden calf worship. So we know that we ain't dealing with no Americas and no Israelites in the Americas until transatlantic slave trade. Because if so, then you ain't never worshiped no golden calf, and not worshiping the golden calf, you can't claim Israelite history. If you didn't worship the golden calf and was taken during the transatlantic slave trade to the Americas, you cannot be an Israelite. And some of these folks call themselves Israelites or NBAs or some saying that they native black Americans. Man, it's a conspiracy to keep you Israelites locked out of your heritage. And y'all so stupid, man, that y'all going for that old stupid mess. But look here, that this is Second Kings. I think, chapter, this would be 13. And Jeroboam fortified Shechem in the hills country of Ephraim and resided there. And he moved out from there and fortified Peniel. Jeroboam said to himself, now the kingdom may well return to the house of David, if these people shall go up to offer sacrifice at the house of the Elohim in Jerusalem. The heart of this people will turn back to their master, King Rehoboam of Judah. They will kill me and go back to King Rehoboam of Judah. So the king took counsel and made two golden calves. Two golden calves. Now, we know the Native Americans is not smelting any gold and turning it into golden calves. They didn't even turn it in gold into the animals, men, that they worship. And we're going to go over some of the animals that they worship. But he made two golden calves and put it on the peoples. One in Dan and the other in Bethel. So what these Israelites get that we from the Americas, man, is real evil. It's real evil, man. It's evil and diabolical, man. It's evil and diabolical. Look, the natives, zoolatry or animal worship was a popular tradition in Native American culture. Many animals was considered sacred by the peoples of indigenous tribes of America. And when animals are revered as God or a deity, they hold great spiritual significance and represent many religious beliefs. And then this is what they worship. Man, this is what they worship. But because they followed that bison around that people's call buffaloes, they followed that around. Man, then they followed, Man, the albino moose around, you know what I'm saying? He was sacred. Albino moose is just a rare, majestic animal, and the indigenous peoples of Nova Scotia regarded them as sacred, as spirit animals, spiritual animals, and so forth. And killing one was to bring bad luck. And serpent worship, man, the natives was big on serpent worship, holding serpents and jumping around fires and so forth. I ain't knocking them for what they did, but they wasn't no Israelites. They wasn't no Israelites worshiping golden calves. They wasn't no Israelites worshiping golden calves. Look, some Native American tribes pay reverence to rattlesnakes and king snakes whose cause for the winds and the violent windstorms. In the Hopi tribes of Arizona, the serpents played a big role in one of their dances. The Natchez temples of the sun worship rattlesnakes. The Aztec deity Quetzalcoatl was depicted as one feathered serpent. Meaning, you know what I'm saying? Meaning they did Mesoamerican culture, all even down in South America. Man, they worship serpents. Serpents. Man, they worship serpents. You know what I'm saying? The horned serpent is a popular image. Man, they worship all the serpents. Man, I even posted a video not too long ago, of the natives worshiping serpents. Man, here go one right here. Men worshiping serpents, man. The serpent king, you know what I'm saying? That was a serpent king in the Americas, man. And them folks will get you, man, if you didn't worship serpents like they did. You know what I'm saying? The serpent king. And the Israelites say, oh, we from the Americas. They didn't even have no golden serpents walking around, let alone a golden calf. As you see that the Tanakh say, we did the golden calf. That's how you know that the Native Americans are not Israelites, because there's no golden calf in their history. There's no golden calf found nowhere in the Americas, and the natives are still around that they would say, yeah, we did golden calf worship. So where the Israelites get that foolish stuff from is that they pirate other folks' history without doing any research. Man, the computers and all the information in the world, man, is put on the computers now, so it ain't no excuse. It's just that them Israelites trying to line themselves up with folks that done suffered hardships by our captors and slave owners and they children, and they trying to line themselves up, and they don't know. They'll say, well, they was pig, meaning they was black. Man, you Israelites are bone mad for the simple fact that it's pig-minted peoples all over the face of the earth. It was pig-minted folks in China. It's pig-minted folks in India that got dark skin, especially all in Australia, Malaysia, man, everywhere. It was even some pig-minted folks, man, probably up in Europe, man, in Spain and Lower Italy, because it's real close to Africa. Man, you got pig-minted folks all in Africa. Man, you got pig-minted folks everywhere. That don't make them us. That do not make them us. So you Israelites, man, are real foolish when y'all say that we from the Americas, knowing that Almighty y'all brung us to this Egyptian system that was set up to pattern Egypt, where they changed our names, had us in bondage, and making crops and harvesting crops and all kind of stuff. And that you Israelites align yourselves with peoples that's not Israelites, have been through none of the stuff that we've been through. And then I show you Israelites over and over and over in Tanakh history that we escaped the Assyrians. Is why if you read 2 Chronicles 30, if you read 2 Chronicles 30, that King Hezekiah is still dealing with the Israelites after the so-called Assyrian captivity, and this is in 715 BC. This is 7 years after the so-called Assyrian captivity that Israelites men are still at home. So it never was any 10 lost tribes. It never was any 10 lost tribes. And you Israelites say that 10 tribes was taken and then they went some kind of mysterious way that they got from over here in Syria Empire, in between Iraq, Syria, and Iran in some kind of way. They miraculously traveled all across the world, and then they ended up in the Americas, and then they started doing bison worship, snake worship, and all that old stuff, but some kind of way holding on to the law that Moses gave us. Man, you folks is crazy. And that the folks that worship and believe in that type of mess, man, is holding us back. They holding us back with them myths and them lies and so forth. We got to start distancing ourselves and ridicule them Israelites, men that be preaching this false doctrine, talking about the natives of Israelites when they had serpent kings. Man, they had serpent kings running around, worshiping serpents and so forth. Even in South America, man, they had serpent kings flying on serpents, winged serpents with feathers and so forth. But you Israelites say that those folks are Israelites, when in the Tanakh history that it wasn't no 10 lost tribe. Look, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel, Judah. He also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh. This is 2 Chronicles 30. To come to the house of the Elohim in Jerusalem to keep the Passover of the Elohim Yah of Israel. The king and his officers in his congregation in Jerusalem had agreed to keep the Passover in the second month, for at that time they were unable to keep it, for not enough priests had sanctified themselves, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. The king, the whole congregation, thought it proper to issue a decree and proclaim throughout all Israel, from Beersheba to Dan, that they should come to the house of the Elohim Yah of Israel in Jerusalem. Look, where is Bathsheba and Dan in the Americas? But in the Promised Land, where we originally from, we had it. Look here, from Beersheba all the way to Dan, and they ain't worshiping no birds and no serpents. Even when we was up off the covenant, that the Israelites ain't worshiping no serpents. Mean they ain't worshiping no birds. They ain't worshiping no eagles. Mean they ain't worshiping no otters. They ain't worshiping no bisons or none of that stuff. You see what I'm saying? But we did worship a domesticated calf that we made gold out of. And the Egyptians had the cow with the sun disk on his head and so forth. It's called Hathor. Hathor, or the Queen of Heaven worship. And then that's what we worship going into Egypt when we was finally kicked off the land in the book of Jeremiah. How we told the prophet Jeremiah that we wasn't going to do the covenant, and that we was going deeper into Africa to worship this religion right here. So we was used to this right here, and that we wasn't used to the serpent worship that the Israelites claim that we are Native Americans, and that we did serpent worship and so forth. You know what I'm saying? That's false. That's false, man. The Native Americans worship bears. Man, they worship bears. Man, they worship deer or the stag. Man, they worship beavers and otters. Man, they worship the jaguar. Man, we had lions in the Bible, man, and we didn't even worship the lions, and the lions ate some of the folks up, man, at different times. Man, these folks in Americas worship eagles. Man, they worship eagles. Man, they worship hummingbirds. Man, they worship the wolf. mean, the wolf was real big, man, on the Native American worship. No Israelites worship no wolves. You can't use the Tanakh to support wolf worship. You Israelites are mad. You's a mad individual to try to say that we was in the Americas worshiping wolves and so forth, and then try to use the Tanakh as your history, but you can't prove none of that stuff in the Tanakh. You can't prove none of this stuff. Remember, we got a tradition of the things that we worship, and we wouldn't stop doing that. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't stop doing it. We worship Egyptian religion on the Promised Land, and we went back into Africa to worship the Egyptian religion, which caused our enslavement. Look at the snake worship, serpent worship. Man, they worship serpents, man. Some Native American tribes pay reverence to rattlesnakes. I told y'all that. Man, look, the white, the albino moose, man, you know what I'm saying? To kill one of them was bad luck. Look, the white bison and stuff that the Israelites call the bison. Man, they called the bison the buffaloes when it was really a bisons. You know what I'm saying? And that the folks followed it around. Man, the folks follow these things around and so forth, man, and that no Israelites worship bisons. And then if we did, we'd have turned it into a golden bison, as the Tanakh say. But we worship the golden calf. So whoever teaching that false history that we from the Americas, and we been in the Americas, and we from the Americas, man, get away from them and discredit them. And how you discredit them and say, show golden calf worship. Show golden calf or golden cow worship in the Americas. If you claiming the Israelite heritage and you say that the folks in North America and South America are Israelites and that's our home, then you need to show some golden calf worship. Golden calf worship. You ain't gonna be able to do it because the golden calf wasn't sacred to them, and they didn't do that. They worship serpents, eagles, bears, mooses, otters, and beavers, and all those animals that they was familiar with, and that how they wasn't familiar with smelting gold and doing calf worship, cow worship. You know, we had cow worship, cows when we was in Egypt during Pharaoh time, and that he gave us land for our herds and so forth, and that we had domesticated animals. Show that the natives had domesticated bisons. Show that the natives had houses with roofs, with a roof. Show that the natives dug wells to get water up out of it. Show the natives doing any of that in the Americas. You can't. They live by rivers and streams and so forth. So you Israelites are false whenever you teach that mess. And then, like I say, that King Hezekiah had us at home after the Assyrian captivity, and that I showed that Assyria was destroyed in 612 BCE, and then how that they had been came into Africa. So any tribes or any peoples that they would have took in 722 BC but would have came home, man, a few years later, 40 years or 30 years later, in 690 something BCE, when the Assyrians took Egypt over and was trying to get away from Ashkenazi. You know, Ashkenazi chased us off the Promised Land under the name Scythian. So you Israelites, man, y'all need to get yourselves together and stop believing in everything somebody say is part of Israelite history. Look here, look. All right, so I show you what King Hezekiah sent the letter from Beersheba to Dan, and they came and kept the Passover for the Elohim of Israel in Jerusalem. Not often did they act in accordance with what was written. The carriers went out with the letters with the king and his officers throughout all Israel. in Judah, by the order of the king proclaiming, O ye Israelites, return unto the Elohim Yah of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remainder of you who are what? Escape from the hands of the kings of Assyria. So we didn't go to the Americas, and then our last act on the promised land for the 99%, and it's going to be in the book of Jeremiah, where we went into Africa to worship the golden calf. We didn't go into Africa, man, to do snake worship or worship the jaguar or the bear or the otter. So whenever Israelite come to y'all with that mess, tell them to look at the Israelite Brotherhood site for clarity. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood.